Welcome to the Bhagavatam. Today we're going to be reading from the 5th canto, and these are going to be the teachings of Rishabhdeva. But before I get into it, let me talk about something very important. The truth. We're a nation that believes in the truth. Our laws, our legal systems are about the truth, wanting to find out the truth. Our science explores the truth in every way it can. And we all believe that people should speak the truth. But what is the truth? Is the truth something that is determined by our opinions? Is it determined by our knowledge? Is it determined by our society? Who determines what the truth is? Some would say God. Well, why is it then that God's version of the truth varies from one place to another? Has God's opinion of the truth perhaps been altered, perhaps been modified in some way, and that's why it looks different in different spiritual teachings? That can be perhaps a very important part. So I think it's really important to understand that the truth is not the domain of any one person, country, or entity. In fact, whoever thinks they know the truth, I would say to you, be careful. There are many who claim to know what the truth is, but there are very few who actually get it. The Bhagavatam speaks of a truth that is beyond that which is conceived by the mind. It speaks of a truth that is transcendental. It is called Param Satyam, the ultimate truth. Now you might say such truth, again, is some other belief system, but no, it's not. A truth needs to be verifiable. Truth needs to be something that can be in some way understood, verified, and experienced even. There are many, many truths in this world and many layers of truth, shall I say. And the Bhagavatam talks about a truth that is of a deep spiritual nature, experiencing the truth about that which appears to not exist, but which in fact exists. That which we think does not exist, that is the soul or God, is beyond the perception of the human senses and beyond the understanding of the mind. To be able to engage in a pursuit of that which is inaccessible to the mind and senses, we need a very different system, a very different process. That process is known as yoga. It means connecting with, linking up with the divine, coming to a level of consciousness where you can experience that divine source of all that is. So I encourage you to try and listen with an open mind, because what you're going to hear today is going to blow your mind. It's going to tell you things that most people have a hard time hearing. And it may not be very pleasant, it may not be very palatable, but you will notice that it is true. You may not like it, but the truth is not always something that we like. Very often the people who care the most about us are able to share with us truths about ourselves that we don't want to hear. Today might be one such moment in time where you're going to hear something that you don't want to hear, but which will uplift you, which will bring you to the place of freedom and liberation from all other relative truths that have been causing suffering life after life. Let's get started with the Bhagavatam. Now, for those of you that having any difficulty in hearing the audio, I encourage you to use the text that I've put in the chat. From what I can tell, it should be working, but... Okay, one moment. And let's get started now. Okay. So, in the past few episodes of the Bhagavatam, we talked about the great king Priyavrata and how he had a son Agnidhra, and how Agnidhra had fallen madly in love with an Apsara, a heavenly girl who was sent by King Indra to seduce him. And how he was so enamored by her, and together they formed a family. They had many sons, the greatest of whom was Nabhi. Nabhi went on to become King Nabhi, and he was married to Meru Devi. They worshipped Vishnu, and with great faith and devotion, and with a pure, uncontaminated mind. And through their prayers, the Supreme Being manifests himself in a beautiful, captivating form. Now, two things come to mind. Why would the Supreme Being manifest before this couple? Why would he care? Right? After all, many of us may pray to God. Many of us have called out to God. Many of us have wanted something from God, but we never had anyone appear in front of us in some godly form. But here we see how this king and his wife are praying with such ardent devotion and such incredible love that their faith, their devotion, their pure, uncontaminated mind has attracted the Supreme Being, Supreme Personality, in a most beautiful, captivating form. It writes in the Bhagavatam that he had 4 hands in which he carried, in each of them, a conch shell, in the other hand a lotus flower, in the other hand a disc, which is a weapon, and a club. Two of those are, the conch shell and the lotus, are to bless the devotees, and the disc and the club are to protect. Around the lower portion of his body he wore a yellow silken garment, and around his neck was a garland of forest flowers. He was beautifully decorated with a helmet, earrings, bangles, belt, pearl necklace, armlets, ankle belts, and other ornaments, bedecked with radiant jewels. King Nabhi, his priests and associates, all of them felt like poor people who have suddenly attained great riches. They received from the Supreme Being, or rather they received him respectfully by bowing their heads and offering him things in worship. The priest said, "You are full in and complete in every respect. You are unlimited enjoyment and blissful existence itself. You are satisfied with the love of your devotees and do not need all these sacrificial arrangements which we have made. We are completely ignorant and do not know the goal of life. You have appeared here out of your abundant and causeless mercy to bless us and allow us to see you. Your personal presence is rarely experienced even by those who are liberated." There's a lot in here. For one, it talks about how the Supreme Being, or God, and we don't use the word God as much because of the association it has with other religions and how they perceive God. Unfortunately, that perception, that idea, that is rather abhorrent. It's actually not fitting, not befitting, almost insulting to the actual presence of God. God is not judgmental. God is not angry or jealous. Though he can be anything he wants to be, of course. At the same time, we see here a description of a form of God that is so beautiful. And at the same time, the priests say, you are unlimited enjoyment. You are unlimited enjoyment. See, Krishna is the source of all pleasure. We look for pleasure in the world, just as we look for love and we look for happiness and we look for adventures and we look for good things to experience, but he is unlimited enjoyment. One who has experienced him actually experiences that unlimited enjoyment. And he is blissful existence itself. In fact, it is said that spirit, or the spiritual nature of us, is Sat Chit Ananda. Ananda is blissful existence. He is the reservoir of all bliss, the source, the fountainhead of bliss and of love, of everything we've been looking for. He is, in fact, the one we've been looking for. Now, what they're also pointing out is that you are satisfied with the love of your devotees and do not need all these sacrificial arrangements that we have made. So you see, as human beings, we offer the things we have to God. But does God need them? Absolutely not. Just like a child might sometimes find something that the parent likes and picks it up and gives it to the parent. Maybe it's a pair of shoes. Maybe it's some nice thing to eat. And the child goes and gives it, Mommy, Daddy, please have this. We are like that. We're taking the very things that God has blessed us with and offering them back to God. But does it mean that God needs them? If a person takes a handful of water from the river Ganga and pours it back into the Ganga, does it mean that the Ganges or the Ganga needs that water? No. She is abundant in it and has blessed us with that sacred water. So in much the same way, they're saying that you have no need for what we're offering you, and yet you accept it because of our love. Then they say here, you've appeared here out of your abundant and causeless mercy. And that's a big part to understand, is that the path of devotion, the path of bhakti, is filled with this idea of mercy, of blessings, of knowing that we are inadequate, we are small, we are tiny, we cannot do things right. It is only by the mercy of God that we're able to, and that he receives us even as we are, flawed, imperfect, because of his causeless mercy. Causeless, meaning having no cause. And with that mercy, he blesses us and allows us to see him. Your personal presence, they say, is rarely experienced even by those who are liberated. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, Krishna appears in the temple as the deity. So many of you who have been to a temple of Krishna, you will see beautiful deities over there, dressed up in beautiful outfits and garlands. Every day they are fed and decorated, and every day they are put to sleep and woken up in the morning, just as you would with a person. So Prabhupada writes, Krishna appears in the temple as the deity so that we may see him with our material eyes. These eyes cannot see spirit. Their vision is limited to material things like stone and wood. By his causeless mercy, he appears in the form of the deity to receive our offerings and our loving service, even though he has no need for such things. Right? So it's really important to understand God is not interested in what you're doing. You could say, oh, I'm giving God millions of dollars. Do you think he cares? Your millions of dollars. Oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. No, that's all for your ego. You're doing it. What God is interested in is your love, your heart, your surrender, your all. Are you willing to give your all? Not just a tiny portion of what you have, but your all. And that is where love of God begins. If you say, why does God not appear before me? Or why does God not talk to me? Ask yourself, have you given your all? Have you realized that everything belongs to God, including you? that even you do not belong to yourself. You never created yourself. Your parents never created you. They were part of a process, a natural process when two people get together and give birth to a child, but they didn't do it. They didn't personally sit and organize how your hair should look and how your eyes should look and how your no. It just happened. The priests continued. So these are the priests who were there performing the ceremony on behalf of the king Nabhi. And the king wanted to have a son just like God. It's a pretty amazing thought. So they said to Vishnu when he appeared, they said, this is the great King Nabhi, the emperor of Bharatvarsh, of this entire planet. And his ultimate goal in life is to have a son like you. His position is like that of a person approaching a very rich man and begging for a little grain. The king is worshipping you for a son, although you can offer him anything, including liberation. So the king could have got anything from Vishnu at that time. He could have asked for material things. He could have asked for liberation. But he says, no, there's only one thing I want. I want to have a son like you. The priests say, dear Lord, we have all been carried away by the unconquerable illusory energy, Maya, the illusion of this world. And our intelligence has been bewildered by waves of material enjoyment, which are like poison. So you see, they have a deep spiritual understanding here. They understand the nature of this world and how it seduces us and how it entraps us like poison. We have been bewildered by waves of material enjoyment. So many people, almost everyone, is chasing material enjoyment. And no matter how much they get, it's never enough. It's always like a mirage in the desert. The more you get, the more you want. It's never enough. In fact, the thirst is never quenched. The emptiness cannot be filled within us. And so we keep on thinking, maybe I'll try this next thing, and then the other thing, and maybe this person or that person, or maybe this thing or that thing. And advertisers completely exploit us. And governments, people all around us exploit us. The priests have understood this, and so they pray with deep, heartfelt realization. They continue saying, our intelligence is not very sharp. You can also see here there's a lot of humility in their prayer. They say, our intelligence is not very sharp. They said earlier, we have been carried away by the unconquerable illusory energy, and our intelligence has been bewildered. This is honest vulnerability with which one approaches God. Vulnerability, humility. These are vital and powerful ways in which to reach out to God. They continue, we are not experienced in ascertaining life's goal. By inviting you to this negligible sacrifice for some material motive, we have certainly committed a great offense at your lotus feet. Therefore, O Lord of Lords, please excuse us by your causeless mercy and equanimous mind. Vishnu replied, I am very pleased with your prayers. You are all truthful. It is difficult to obtain a son like me, since I am without a second, and no one is equal to me. I shall expand myself into a plenary portion and appear in a spiritual form through the womb of Meru Devi, the wife of King Nabhi. So he's going to expand himself. The one Vishnu will now expand and become a portion of himself and appear in the womb of the king's wife. There are many pictures of this child known as RIshabhdeva. He went on to become a very well-known, famous personality, both in the Bhagavatam and the Vedas and in Jainism, where he's also been revered as one of the original Tirthankaras. His teachings were extremely profound and made a big difference in the world. So, it is said that their son, Rishab, had all the symptoms of the Supreme Being: a well-built body, prowess, strength, beauty, name, fame, influence, and enthusiasm. He was equal to everyone and very peaceful. He could control his senses and his mind, and he possessed all opulences. He did not hanker for material enjoyment. Please pay close attention to these qualities, because these are the qualities of the divine, and these are the qualities we need to cultivate to be able to approach that divine source. We need to cultivate them so that we are then in the resonance of God. If we are there, for example, let's take the first part here. If we are discriminating against people, then we cannot be calling ourselves godly. We are not in the frequency of God. If our mind is agitated, then we are not in the resonance of God. So it says he was equal to everyone and very peaceful. So if we are not in that, it is very difficult for us to approach God. We can, and he will help us, but we need to be in a place of deep humility and prayer. So humility and prayer is not because God needs people to be humble and pray to him and bow down and do all these things. No, it's because it helps us become receptive. When we are full of ourselves, we cannot receive. When we are empty, we can receive. So being empty and being humble is the same thing. Being open, realizing that I know nothing, I am nothing. These are the states of mind in which one approaches God, or for that matter, a spiritual teacher, because only in that state of mind can we learn something. Only in that state of mind can something new occur. Only in that state of mind can something extraordinary happen. When you're already all planned out and you think you know and you think you're in control of things, well, then nothing extraordinary is going to happen. At the best, that which you're trying to control, or that which you believe, or that which you think, at the best, that will happen. Half the time it won't. But, that's the best you can hope for. You cannot hope for something new, something unpredictable, something miraculous. You cannot, because you're not looking for it even. So this boy, this king, this son of King Nabhi, his name was, when King Nabhi saw all these wonderful qualities in him, he thought his son to be the best of beings and named him Rishabh. By the transcendental energy called Yogamaya, so Krishna has this very special energy called Yogamaya. There is Maya, Maya of the world, the illusion of the world. And then there is Yogamaya. Yogamaya is actually an energy that is only part of his Leela, his pastimes. So when he comes for a particular pastime, Yogamaya assists him in that pastime. So sometimes, and in many ways, when Krishna was there, and as we'll hear about in his pastimes directly, he would make people not realize who he is. They would think of him as their son, their friend, their buddy. They'd climb on his shoulder. They'd do all kinds of things that you'd never do to someone as exalted as God. But that was part of Yogamaya. Yogamaya would cover them over and make them believe that he's just one of us. And that's how he wanted it. And that's how he likes it. He wants to be accepted as one of us. He wants to be loved as one of us. But that's an advanced stage. I mean, in the beginning, we start off with a more, a more respectful way, right? Where we place him on an altar, we worship him as a deity, we start in that way. And then gradually we develop an intimacy. We develop a sense of connection. We develop a relationship. And in that relationship now, and in that intimacy that arises from that relationship, yes, so much more is possible. Then you can speak to him from your heart. Then you can share with him of your grievances, your anger, your upset, your hurt, your frustration. It's all okay. The formality drops off. Just like when you get to know somebody well, the formality drops and you develop a very deep, profound, intimate relationship with that person. So by the transcendental energy called Yogamaya, the king accepted the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Father, as his own son. Out of his supreme goodwill, the Supreme Being behaved as if he were an ordinary human being. King Nabhi would say, "My dear son, my darling." In this way, he began to raise his transcendental son with great affection and was overwhelmed with transcendental bliss, and joy, and devotion. This was the same mood you see when Mother Yashoda is dealing with Krishna. This is the same mood you see with his father, Nanda Baba. This is the same mood you see when anyone loves God. There is this sweetness, there is this joy, there is this devotion. In the presence of Rishabh, King Nabhi became more powerful day after day. So as a sort of side benefit, his power increased and grew. Rishabh was very popular, the young boy, was very popular among the citizens, government officers, and ministers. King Nabhi enthroned Rishabh as the emperor of the world to give protection to the general populace in terms of the Vedic system. He entrusted him into the hands of learned Brahmins who would guide him in administering the government. Now, here what's happening is, and this is so important to understand, is that although this is the supreme being we're dealing with, an expansion of Vishnu, he's behaving like an ordinary human being, and so going through all the processes just as an ordinary human would. So the king Nabhi placed Rishabh in the hands of Brahmins who would teach him and guide him in administering the government. Then Nabhi and his wife Meru Devi went to Badrik Ashram in the Himalaya mountains, where they performed austerities and penances with great jubilation and were elevated to the spiritual world known as Vaikuntha. King RIshabhdeva, as he was now called, to show an example, at first trained as a celibate student, a brahmachari, in the Gurukul, or the school of his spiritual master. He then married Jayanti, who had been offered to him again by Indra. Together they lived an ideal household life. Their eldest son Bharat was a great exalted devotee of Vishnu, and in his honor, the planet was named Bharatvarsh. Many people refer to India as Bharatvarsh, but the reality is this entire planet was known as Bharatvarsh at one time, after King Bharat, who was the son of Rishabhdeva. I think you might begin to see now, especially those of you who know of India being called Bharat, this is the deeper significance and the roots of that. The Supreme Being who had incarnated as Rishabhdeva was fully independent. What does this mean? It means that he needed nothing. He needed no one. He was completely independent. We all want to be independent, but we are not. We are constantly dependent on all kinds of things. We're dependent on sun, we're dependent on air, we're dependent upon other people, we're dependent on a job, we're dependent on so many things, hospitals in case we get sick, right? But he was fully independent. His form was spiritual. So in other words, he had a form, just like we have a form, but our form is material, made of matter. But his form was spiritual. So you could see it, but it was made of spirit. It was eternal and full of transcendental bliss. What it means is that he never would get old. He would not die. Right? He eternally had nothing to do with the four principles of material misery. Four things that all of us experience: birth, death, old age, and disease. These are referred to here as the four principles of material misery. But he had nothing to do with that. He did not experience them as we do at all. He was not attached to anything material. He was always equipoised and saw everyone on the same level. He was unhappy to see others unhappy, and he was the well-wisher of all living entities. Although he was a perfect personality, the Supreme Lord and controller of all, he nonetheless acted as if he was an ordinary conditioned soul. He followed the rules of society as in the principles of Varnashram Dharma. So that's the system, Varna, Ashram, Dharma. This was a system that is talked about in the Bhagavad Gita as well. Krishna talks about establishing the principles of Varna and Ashram. The Varnas are Brahmachari, sorry, the ashrams are brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. I won't go into in detail, but different stages of life. We start off as a student, then become a householder, then gradually become detached from household life, vanaprastha, and then finally take sannyas and become totally renounced, as you'll see in the case of all these kings and so the stories that we've been reading. And the varnas are the Brahmins, the priests, the Kshatriyas, the rulers or the administrators, the warriors, the Vaishyas or the business people, and the Shudras, those who serve and take care of society. So he followed the rules of society as in the principles of Varnashram Dharma. These principles had been corrupted in due course of time, and therefore through his personal characteristics and behavior, he taught the general public how to perform their duties. It's a very important point again here. When one is teaching, the Vedic system of teaching is to teach by example, right? By embodying those qualities and teaching them by example. That is how people learn. In fact, even with children, you'll see, children don't do what you say, they do what you do. They watch you, they observe you. And if they don't see you doing the same thing, if you tell them, tell them mommy's not home. Well, now they learn to lie. They learned it's okay. Mommy can do it. Why can't I? So the statement here is, whatever action is performed by a great person, the common men will follow. And this is there in the Bhagavad Gita as well. This idea that what the leader does, the others, those who are under that person, will also do the same. You see this again and again. In our society, the leaders are corrupt and the people are corrupt. The leaders have no moral standard. The people have no moral standard. The leaders exploit their citizens. The people exploit each other. There is no ideal example. There are no ideal leaders. That is why we read the Bhagavatam, because that's the next best thing we can do, is to gain inspiration from an earlier time when things were different. The idea is not for you to believe or not believe. We're not concerned with belief. We're concerned with inspiration. We read these texts so that we may be inspired, so we may learn, so we may grow, so we may understand a different possibility, a different reality other than the one that is staring us in the face day after day. Srila Prabhupada writes, the leaders of society must be so ideal that by following them one can be relieved from the clutches of material existence. I wish so. They were so. Rishabh followed the Vedic principles and performed all kinds of sacrifice to please Vishnu. The people loved their king and were completely satisfied and did not want for anything at any time or by any means. Although his sons were very well behaved, devoted, and qualified, he instructed them so that in the future they would rule the world very perfectly. And that brings us to the teachings of Rishabhdeva. These are very, very powerful, and I'd like you to pay attention here, really focus in. Rishabhdeva said to his sons, my dear boys, of all the living entities who have accepted material bodies in this world, so all the living entities means all living entities, from the animals, the insects, the birds, of all living entities who have accepted material bodies in this world, one who has been awarded this human form should not work hard day and night simply for sense gratification, which is available even for dogs and hogs that eat, the hogs, especially if in a wild situation, that eat stool. Try and understand what he's saying. That when you've been given this human form of life, it should not be used to work hard day and night simply for sense gratification, for food, for sex, for pleasure. Because even animals engage in the same activity. One should engage in penance and austerity to attain the divine position of devotional service. So you say, why? What is this penance and austerity? Truth is, you've all been engaged in penance and austerity. When you get up in the morning and go to work, some people get up at 5, some at 6, some at 7. That's a penance you're doing. It's an austerity to get up. It's not easy, it's difficult. Your body wants to sleep on. You want to be able to relax, you want to chill. But you're doing this penance because by doing it, you get something. So penance and austerity is very important to achieve anything. If you are a student, then it's important. This penance and austerity is that you will study and you will learn and you will go to classes and you will prepare for your exams. So important, all of this. Nothing is gained without penance and austerity. If you're into being fit, then you go to the gym. Again, there's a penance, there's an austerity. You have to give up some luxury, some convenience to go to the gym and work hard at something and sweat it out. You could have been sitting home and kind of sleeping, or you could have been watching TV, you could have been relaxing and eating away. But no, you chose to do something difficult. Doing things that are difficult is very important for our growth. If we just do everything that is easy and comfortable, then we will become lethargic and we will never push ourselves, we will never challenge ourselves. So he says one should engage in penance and austerity to attain the divine position of devotional service. And that's how you get to a place of devotion to God. By such activity, one's heart is purified. And when one attains this position, he attains eternal blissful life. See, there's an actual benefit. When you rise early and you meditate and you engage in worshiping God and in reading about Him, like in this Bhagavatam or in these texts that we're reading now, then you experience Brahma Saukyam, which is eternal blissful life. Not somewhere out there in some heaven, but right here, right now. This is not a post-dated check of a future happiness, but it's what happens in the present moment, here and now. Right? When one attains this position, he attains eternal blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness and which continues forever. Anantam. So important here. So you will attain eternal blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness. See, material happiness is when things go your way, you're happy. When you get what you want, you're happy. And when you don't, you're unhappy. When things don't go your way, you're unhappy. But the difference between material and spiritual is one word. Material has a cause, a reason. If this happens, then I will be happy. And it doesn't last. That's another part of it. But spiritual has no reason. It is causeless, akaran, without any cause. And it is eternal. It is always available to us. It is always there. Then he says, one can attain the path of liberation from material bondage only by rendering service to highly advanced spiritual personalities. Those personalities could be impersonalists or devotees. In other words, they could be people who feel that the divine is energy, or they could believe that the divine is a being. Either way, by serving highly advanced spiritual personalities, whether one wants to merge into the divine or associate with the Supreme Being, one should render service to such Mahatmas or highly evolved beings. Why? Because the Mahatmas, the highly evolved persons, are equipoised. They do not see any difference between one living entity and another. They are peaceful and are fully engaged in spiritual practices. They are devoid of anger and they work for the benefit of everyone. They do not behave in any abominable way. So these are all characteristics by which you can recognize such people. But what is the benefit for you? That they will show you how to do the same. What they have attained, they can now share with you. A person who simply has knowledge cannot share these things with you. one who has realized that knowledge, one who is living by that knowledge, one who is embodying that knowledge, such a person can give it to you as well. Such a person is a Mahatma or a great soul, and such a person can guide you on the path of liberation from material bondage. Those who are interested in reviving love of God do not like to do anything that is not related to God. They are not interested in mingling with people who are busy maintaining their bodies, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Think about it. These again are activities that animals do. They eat, they sleep, they mate, they defend. If that is the essence of what we do, then how are we any different from them? To be human is to understand the nature of who we are and who is God. That is the ultimate truth. And when you understand that and you act upon it, not just enough to just understand, it's not just an intellectual thing, then at that point you realize, I need to revive my relationship with God. And those who are interested in reviving that relationship do not like to do anything that is not related to God. They are not attached to their homes, although they may be householders, nor are they attached to their wife, children, friends, or wealth. At the same time, they are not indifferent to the execution of their duties. Such people are interested in collecting only enough money to keep the body and soul together. When a person considers sense gratification the aim of life, he certainly becomes mad after materialistic living and engages in all kinds of karma or sinful activity. He does not know that due to his past misdeeds, he has already received a body, which, although temporary, is the cause of his misery. Nowadays we see a lot of people struggling around their body. They have a hard time accepting their gender, accepting their race, accepting their looks. So they try to beautify themselves on Instagram with filters. They try to dominate others through race, or they try to somehow prove that they are of a different gender than they were born. In whatever case they're dealing with here, the fact is that the Bhagavatam presents you a different understanding, and that is that this material body is the product of our past karma. Trying to change it, trying to alter it, either by Instagram filters or by trying to cut out parts of our body or modify it from male to female or female to male, is an utter and absolute waste of time. We need to understand, in fact, that we are not the body and be able to go beyond having a body, beyond coming back to this in this cycle of birth and death, life after life, body after body. In fact, as far as bodies go, there are times you've had a male body or sometimes a female body, at times an animal body. We've been in all these bodies. We've been changing bodies, life after life. But where has it got us? And if in this life we try to change our body again, where will it get us, right? We need to understand that this physical reality is not our home. This is not where we belong. And there is no need to change things on the external front. We need to change things on the internal front. That's where change begins. Yes, we got to take care of the body. Yes, we've got to take care of our things, our possessions, our families, and so on. Take care of them. But don't make them the goal of your life, for they're not. So he says here, Rishabhdeva continues, he does not know that due to his past misdeeds, his past karma, he has already received a body which, although temporary, is the cause of his misery. Actually, the living entity should not have taken on a material body, but he has been awarded the material body for sense gratification. Therefore, I think it not befitting an intelligent person to involve himself again in the activities of sense gratification, by which he perpetually gets material bodies one after another. As long as one does not inquire about the spiritual values of life, one is defeated and subjected to miseries arising from ignorance. Be it sinful or pious, karma has its resultant actions. If a person is engaged in any kind of karma, the mind becomes impure. The consciousness is unclear. And as long as one is absorbed in karmic activity, one has to accept a material body. So either positive karma or negative karma. Either way, you will be entangled in this world. The idea is to engage in activities that take us beyond karma. So, if you try to do good deeds to others, that's good karma. But even that binds you in the world. The idea is to do everything you do as an offering unto God. Then you are freed from karma. RIshabhdeva continues, when the living entity is covered by the mode of ignorance, he does not understand the soul or the Supreme Being. On the other hand, one who has love for God, who is none other than myself, is certainly delivered from the cycle of birth and death. So one who has love for God is certainly delivered from the cycle of birth and death. Even though one may be very learned and wise, he is mad if he does not understand that the endeavor for sense gratification is a useless waste of time. Being forgetful of his own interest, he tries to be happy in the material world, centering his interests around his home, which is based on sexual intercourse, and which brings him all kinds of material miseries. In this way, one is no better than a foolish animal. This is very hard-hitting, very hard to hear, and very difficult to assimilate. I get it. But it's a truth, it's a bitter pill that we all need to hear. I need to hear it as much as you do. Because that's the only way we break out of the illusion. That's the only way we snap out of this cycle of birth and death, which has captivated us. The world has captivated us. You may say, oh, I'm not into this or that. Well, what are you into? There'll be something that has captivated you, something that has captured your mind, your senses, and now you're addicted to that. There's always something. You may give up one thing and then you'll find another thing. People give up, let's say, heroin and they go to marijuana, or they give up marijuana and they come to alcohol. They give up alcohol and they find cigarettes. There's always something, right? You might say, I don't do any of those. Oh, well, then what are you addicted to? There'll be something. That might be shopping, might be eating, might be whatever, but they're all keeping you bound to this world. They're all linked with sense gratification. He continues, the attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. Right? My children, my family, my home, my wife, my husband, my spouse, my partner. Mine, 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 mine. When the strong knot in the heart of a person implicated in material life is slackened, one becomes detached from attachment to home, spouse, and children. In this way, one gives up the basic principle of illusion, which is I and mine, and becomes liberated and goes to the transcendental world. My sons, you should accept a highly elevated, spiritually advanced spiritual master. In this way, you should place your faith and love in me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You should stay away from sense gratification and tolerate the duality of pleasure and pain, which are like the seasonal changes of summer and winter. In Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says the same thing, that happiness and distress are like the winter and summer seasons. One must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Same idea is here. So pain and pleasure will come. If we spend all our time trying to alleviate suffering, then we will stay stuck in this world. If when you're hungry, all you do is try to eat, when you're thirsty, then you drink, when it's hot, then you need an air conditioner, and if you just keep on and on trying to alleviate the sufferings of this world, you will not learn anything. The idea is to be able to tolerate these things just as we tolerate summer and winter. Similarly, we need to tolerate both pleasure and pain. There are things we like, there are things we don't like. Tolerate both of them. It's not just that to go for the things we like and avoid the things we don't like. No, have both of them. Do the things that you like and do the things that you don't like. People say, no, do the things you like, right? Then you're being true to yourself. Absolutely not. Do the things you like, but also equally do the things you don't like, because the things you don't like are often difficult things. And doing difficult things develops strength, it develops courage, it develops who you are. It's not just about doing the things you like. So he's giving this incredible advice to his sons. He continues saying, try to realize the miserable condition of living entities who are miserable even when they have everything they desire. Philosophically inquire about the truth. Then undergo all kinds of austerities and penances for the sake of yoga, for the sake of your devotion to God. Give up the endeavor for sense enjoyment and engage in the service of God. Listen to discussions about the Supreme Being and always associate with His devotees. Chant about and glorify Him. Look upon everyone equally on the spiritual platform. So see everyone as a spiritual being, and that's what it means. Give up enmity and subdue anger and lamentation. Abandon identifying the self with the body and the home. In other words, do not think of yourself as this body. Do not think of yourself as identified with your home, and practice reading revealed scriptures like the Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita, because they were revealed to highly evolved beings. Shruti. Live in a secluded place and practice the process by which you can completely control your life air, mind, and senses. It's all instructions for his sons. So powerful. Right. Have full faith in the revealed scriptures and the Vedic literatures, and always observe celibacy. Perform your prescribed duties and avoid unnecessary talks. Always thinking about the Supreme Being, acquire knowledge from the right source. Thus, practicing bhakti or devotional yoga, you will patiently and enthusiastically be elevated in knowledge and be able to give up the false ego. By these means, you will be freed from the ignorance of the desire for karmic activity, and the knot of bondage in the heart will be completely severed. For further advancement, you should also give up the means. That is, you should not become attached to the process of liberation itself. This is also very important. Do not get attached to the process. Sometimes you'll get attached to a certain meditation or a certain teaching. No, go beyond even that. If one is serious about going back home, back to God, he should consider the mercy of God to be the chief aim of life. If one is a father instructing his sons, a spiritual master instructing his disciples, or a king instructing his citizens, he must instruct them as I have advised. Without being angry, he should continue giving instructions, even if his disciple, son, or citizen is sometimes unable to follow his order. Ignorant people who engage in pious and impious activities should be engaged in devotional service or service to God by all means. They should always avoid karmic activity. If one puts into bondage karmic activity, into the bondage of karma, if one puts into the bondage of karmic activity his disciple, son, or citizen who is bereft of transcendental vision, then how will one profit? It is like leading a blind man to a dark well and causing him to fall in. Due to ignorance, the materialistic person does not know anything about his real self-interest, the auspicious path in life. He is simply bound to material enjoyment by lusty desires, and all his plans are made for this purpose. For temporary sense gratification, such a person creates a society of envy. What a great way of putting it, a society of envy. And due to this mentality, he plunges into the ocean of suffering. Such a foolish person does not even know about this. If someone is ignorant and addicted to the path of samsara, the cycle of birth and death, how can one who is actually learned, merciful, and advanced in spiritual knowledge further entangle him in material existence? If a blind man is walking down the wrong path, how can a gentleman allow him to continue on his way to danger? How can he approve this method? No wise or kind person can allow this. One who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a demigod. My body looks exactly like a human being. So now he's talking about himself. My body looks exactly like a human being, but it is not immaterial human body. It is an inconceivably transcendental body, which is made of Sat Chit Ananda, eternality. It is eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. I am not forced by nature to accept a particular type of body. I take on a body by my own sweet will. So that is because RIshabhdeva is an incarnation of Vishnu. That's why he has a spiritual body. When Krishna appears in this world, he too appears in a spiritual form. My heart is also spiritual, and I always think of the welfare of my devotees. Therefore, within my heart can be found the process of devotion, which is meant for devotees. I have abandoned irreligion or adharma and non-devotional activities. They do not appeal to me. Due to my transcendental qualities, people generally pray to me as Rishabhdeva, the Supreme Godhead, the best of all living entities. My dear boys, you are all born from my heart, which is the seat of all spiritual qualities. Therefore, you should not be like materialistic and envious men. You should accept your eldest brother Bharat, who is exalted in devotion. When you serve him, you will automatically serve me and all the citizens. My dear sons, you should not envy any living entity, be he moving or non-moving. Knowing that I am situated in them, you should offer respect to all of them at every moment. In this way, you offer respect to me. The true activity of the sense organs, mind, sight, words, and all the knowledge-gathering and working senses is to engage fully in my service. Unless his senses are thus engaged, the living entity cannot think of getting out of the great entanglement of material existence. There was a lot here. I tried to go through it. These are the teachings of Rishabhdeva. And I'd love to know if you have any questions, if there's something you've been thinking about as I read this, and I'd love to be able to answer your questions. So let me see what we've got. All right. Ooh. Seeley writes, are these living bodhisattvas who renounce liberation from rebirth to help others understand and achieve growth and liberation, are the Mahatmas similar beings? Seeley, you're absolutely right. The Rishabhdeva, who we're reading about today, was a Tirthankara in the Jain tradition. And in Buddhist, they may have called him a bodhisattva. I don't know whether they are the same, bodhisattvas and Tirthankaras, but as far as I know, they are considered to be of a similar nature. So I think you're on the right track with that. He's in fact considered one of the original teachers of Jainism. He is also known to be an incarnation of Vishnu. Buddha is known to be an incarnation of Vishnu. Most people don't know that. It is actually mentioned in the Bhagavatam. He's mentioned as one of the avatars of Vishnu. Seeley writes, over 40 years of penance, working for stuff, I have become quite indifferent to acquiring stuff and attachment to things and personalities who still endeavor for such things. What a great thing, Seeley. This is the path. This is the way. Not only to become detached from the things of the world yourself, but also to avoid people who are too attached to those things. Because it's very important, the association you have, the kind of people that you hang out with, makes a huge difference to your own consciousness. Now, if you are steady in your consciousness, then, and if you mix with people who are worldly, then you will be there to give to them, to enlighten them, to uplift them. But if people are not ready for that, then it is better to avoid them. But it is perfectly all right to be there for those who are inquisitive, who wish to learn, who wish to grow, who wish to understand. We never want to impose this knowledge on anybody. But for one who is a seeker, we need to make ourselves available. We need to be present. We need to be there. In that way, we can be of service. And there is no greater service to the divine than to be able to pass on whatever you have learned in the course of your life to them. That's what the great Mahatmas do. That's what the great teachers do. They pass on what they have learned. Just that they're now living embodiment of that teaching. And that's what we need to aspire to be as well. If you want to be truly effective in being able to teach this wisdom, then become an embodiment of it. And you say, oh no, the things that you read were so difficult to do. The secret is this: they appear difficult because they are difficult for your mind to do. Your mind will come up and say, no, the things you read, oh, they're so hard to do. I can't do all that. It's not possible. But I challenge you to look beyond what you're thinking. Your mind is coming up with those obstacles. Your mind is telling you it's not possible, right? Where else are you getting this thought? But beyond your mind is your soul. And your soul is very capable of all of this. In fact, all the things we're reading are natural for the soul. The soul has no interest in the stuff of this world. No. It's not interested in sense gratification. It's interested in being able to experience itself, its spiritual nature. And whatever will bring it to that spiritual nature is what it wants to do. In fact, one of the things we experience on the spiritual path is that when we are involved in hearing these things, when we are involved in speaking about or reading or hearing about spiritual matters, it's when the soul feels enlivened and awakened and wants and comes, just blossoms. It's almost as if you gave a dying man food. This is soul food. This is what the soul has been longing for all along. And in the absence of that, it has settled for all this other worldly stuff and has ended up finding itself dissatisfied, unhappy, depressed, anxious, fearful. He further writes, my curiosities of spiritual knowledge in earlier times have turned into a hunger for spiritual experiences. So this thing about spiritual experiences, be very careful not to chase them. Let them arise organically from within you. I see a lot of people wanting spiritual experiences, but then because they want the experience becomes elusive. There was a part here where RIshabhdeva says that don't become attached to the process. So the process for some people becomes a mantra. For some people, they think, oh, I'll get it through a drug. I'll get it through marijuana. I'll get it through whatever other substance. Or I'll get it through a certain teacher. Be very careful of things like that. Spirituality is very organic. It is innate. It will flow from within you. So the moment you're looking to anything external to give it to you, be careful. The reason the Bhagavatam says is associate with Mahatmas because they are a source of inspiration. Highly evolved beings are a source of inspiration on your path. They are an example. They show you what is possible. And they might be able to help you snap out of your illusion when you are getting into it, when you're starting to get sort of a little fuzzy about things. They can help you see where your seeing might sometimes get clouded. So that is why. But again, we ultimately need to learn that that which we are seeking is right here within us. The processes are only meant to help us get there. The processes in themselves are not that important. Okay? Now, along with that, I will also throw in its opposite, because it is said that the name of God, the form of God, the deity of God, they're all no different than God. And so therefore, while the processes these are the processes to hear about and worship and so on. Again, experience and enjoy these processes. Just don't get attached to them. Recognize that the real growth it's a change of heart, it's a change of mind, it's a change of spirit. That's what we're looking for. To all of you, thank you so much. I know today's been a little extra long. but there was so much to cover. So thank you so much for being here. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Krishna. I'll see you next week.